Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Tools of the Trade, written by bellumaster. Sitting about the temporary camp were 14 different types of beings. They were all part of the joint survey operation, each of their races deciding that it was worthwhile to have a representative professional present as the new planet was measured and scaled. The verdict would heavily impact what percentage of land and airspace was shared with what species, and the planet was moderately sought after. There was the Belshek, huddling down for the night within the strong carapace armor. The ethereal Ivanich anchoring at a housing point so it would not drift away from the planet into space during the night. The Venedine preening itself, the Kalawa winding down its limbs, and on went the list, along with the human, quite plain in comparison. Translators, radio waves, and physical mouths conversed in galactic standard as the camp was set. It was their first night after the day of independent surveying, eager to share their findings with the like-minded peers. The chatter was nothing like the formal tones used in their reports. "Alatharan, it is good that I see you once more. Convenient time for planets to open, I'm genuinely surprised, hard-fought friend. I only hope that this was as oiled as half as becoming as the last that we met on." The luminescent individual scanned the encampment. "There are many of us. It is good. The task will be finished quickly." "Well, enough of it, Will. Yet I desire to know the talents of those new amongst us." The speaker was a large, broadly built specimen, very solid and physical in presence. "I am Kalnek. The skill of my kind that has been found useful in surveying foreign lands is our ability to measure and adjust to gravitational pull of many sorts." The Ivanich smoked next, its faint version of galactic standard drifting across the air. "Our kind knows what lies within the atmosphere and the speed of the star it circles around." Then the Belshek. "We measure the dangers of the world. Our armor might be impenetrable. If one of us can be killed, it is a harsh place indeed. We know our place in relation to the waters at all times. Be it instinct or intuition, we sense the patterns of the weather." And on it went, with the various species speaking to their abilities and how they related to the process of surveying. Everyone in camp spoke, save for the human. Yet eventually, each eye and ear would turn towards the new being, curious to know what innate skill brought it amongst the ranks of surveyors. The human set down a sandwich. "Sorry, I don't have anything like those things. The most I can do is walk really far, but I also have asthma." "Define, please." "A respiratory issue that makes it difficult for me to be active too long." "This seems self-defeating. Have you brought up this glitch with your programmers?" "Not everyone's a construct Vortnek. Human, or if you have a name." "Sarah." "Sarah, then. How is it that you come amongst the surveyors, if your skill is only to walk far, but also not?" Sarah patted a bag beside her. It was almost as large as a torso. "Everything I need is right in here. Elevation, atmospheric composition, air pressure, geospatial positioning. I can do most everything a surveyor needs to." One of the aliens looked at her in surprise. "What if you must measure an angle? You don't have a carinx to measure with." Sarah pulled 3 tools from her bag. I have a level, a tape measure, and a theodolite." "What if you must test the quality of the water? Can't you taste it and pinpoint the impurities?" She pulled out a couple of transparent tubes. "My test kit's up to right." "But the weather?" The human pulled out a small box with a screen on it, with a deadpan look on her face. "Gravity?" A simple tube with lines and a ball inside. "Light levels and radiation." Another box with a matte black on one side. "The distance to the planet's sun." A small, thin pair of rods. Sarah held out her hands, palms out, fingertips up. "Look, if you all want me to empty out my bag and explain everything, I can, but I'm getting tired. It's been a long day." The Bolshevik spoke. "Apologies, but I would wish that in the near future. How is it that your kind is so plain and useless seeming? I apologize for any offense, but it is incredible to me that one such as yourself," he motioned at her, "can do so much as all of us with only that one container." "My interest is piqued as well. No pre-programmed abilities, and yet your kind has exceeded their parameters." "How was it done?" Sarah began packing up her back, putting the tools away in the various compartments and homes. Maths, I suppose? People saw patterns in the world, figured out what correlated to them, and then pinpointed what to measure when looking for certain information. It's not too complicated. The other surveyors looked between one another, their masterful professions having been deconstructed in a few sentences. The Bolshevik ventured to speak again. Well, allow me to say, it will be a joy to survey with you. I look forward to learning more of your items. Though, I must ask, if your species' skill is not in surveying, then what? Surely there must be something beside it. He curled up into his shell, insulated from the outside temperatures. Of course, surely there must something comes to mind, even if it's unrelated to our task at hand. I see that you brought up much more than the bag. Do you self-regulate or create a thermal barrier about yourself? Sarah looked up from where she was setting down a pad of sleeping bag. In a sense, yes. That's what these are for. But surely, there has to be something. The human crawled into a sleeping setup. Again, it's probably running, but I'm terrible at that. Good night, everyone. Story number 2, When the Gods Call, written by LgFatherAnthrocite. You did what? We communed with your gods. What gods? Which ones? Who told you they were a god? Wait, was there a giant marshmallow man? The human was starting to sound unhinged. Marshmallow? The Apache ambassador was confused. Never mind, it's an old joke, and it would take too long to explain. The human ambassador waved his hand dismissively. More to the point, which god or gods did you speak to, and how? There were a great many of them. Some names we recorded sounded like Quetzalcoatl, Chepitotek, Odin, Loki, Kalima, Vishnu, Zoroaster, Dionysus, and Hermes. We communed verbally, so we cannot confirm written versions of the names. It is done through a ritual by a highly trained priestess who calls on a guiding spirit to take her essence to the land of the gods. We just asked to speak to your gods, and the spirit guided her there. We do this for all of our allies. Aha, that's a hell of a thing. The human ambassador sat back in his chair, lost deeply in thought. After several minutes, he spoke again. What did the gods say? Mostly that they were concerned. It seems humanity has stopped worship of gods. Why is it that you've left behind your gods? Would you not have benefited from their boons? The Apache ambassador looked concerned. There were many human gods, but they were all diminished in power, lacking in devotees. Most of the celestial beings the Apache had communed with were quite caring and generous to their worshippers. Humans, however, had barely even worshipped in centuries. When they were contacted, the humans clamored for reasons and expressed a desire for humans to return to them. We don't need them, the human ambassador replied with almost no hesitation. Do me a favor, do yourselves a favor, never ever mention this to any other humans. It would start more wars than you could possibly imagine. The Apache ambassador was taken aback by the vitriolic tone of his Terran counterpart. Surely the power and blessings of the gods was something to be sought out. Why would any species give up such a boon? The elderly Apache asked his human compatriot just that. Look, Renpick, humans are seen as aggressive and prone to violence, and I'm saying they're right or wrong. Clearly, I'm not in a position to judge, but what I can tell you is that for all of our violent tendencies and aggressive behaviors, it pales in comparison to what the gods demand of us. The human spoke softly, but his voice was thick with emotion. I don't know what your gods gave you, or what they demanded in return, but I know human religion has died in conflict, steeped in hatred, and soaked in blood. Human sacrifice, holy wars, genocidal conflict, plagues, purges, and more. Humans gave up religion so that we could avoid conflict over it. Those gods you met, they're the ones who made us. They're the ones who demanded wars that lasted centuries, killed millions, and divided us as a people. For what? Why? For their own glory, their power, and what do we get in return? A promise of something better when we died. A good harvest. What else? Our gods didn't reward our faith. They simply withheld punishment. Worship of human gods can only lead to suffering. Renpick of the Apache, ambassador to Terra, elder statesman of the galactic government, sat in his couch, shocked to silence. Never had he heard such callous and uncaring pantheon. Most gods provided boons to followers, such as resistance to common illnesses, speed up recovery from injury, and other such benefits. The idea that the gods' grace would merely be a lack of malice was both unfathomable and, at least Renpick, extremely distressing. I sincerely hope that your people never contact our gods again. If you do, tell them to forget about us. We clawed our way out of the dark, out of the mud, and up to the heavens. And we did it without them. In spite of them. We don't need them. We don't want them. Tell them to leave us alone, and we'll leave them alone. It's more than they deserve. End of story. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 peeps. Cold War Boomerwaffen, Severin Cerberus, Bushmaster 177, Henry the Red, Caspar Arnholtz, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Elijah Silvercross, Dragzoon WRE, and Severin Cerberus. Thank you very much.